Today, we're going to walk through a full McKinsey case. So you will see what a case interview looks like and how you might prepare for those upcoming consulting case interviews. Hello. For those who don't know me, my name is Angie. I am an ex-McKinsey consultant and interviewer, now a co-founder of CasewithAI, an AI-powered case interview prep platform. Today, I want to take the time to walk through a full McKinsey case. So you will get a sense of, one, what a case interview looks like, two, the different components that make up a case interview, and three, how you can structure answers for those different questions that you might encounter in a case interview. All right, first of all, I want to talk about what a case interview really is. If you are already familiar with the format, feel free to skip ahead and then get started with the case interview demo. But if you're new to consulting prep, case interview is a phrase that might sound quite foreign and non-intuitive. What it fundamentally is just a problem-solving exercise. So then consulting companies can see how you break down a problem, how you might interact or structure answers in a real consulting project setting. During a case interview, you'll be provided with an overall context and the problem you're trying to solve, and then you will conduct different kind of analysis based on the data that's being provided, and then eventually come up with a recommendation. It is very similar to how a consulting team would structure or operate during a real consulting project setting. In today's video, I'll break down the case interview with a real example, and without further ado, let's get started. So case interviews are typically broken down into several parts. A case prompt is provided to you in the beginning of a case interview. The goal of the case prompt is so that you understand who the client is, the industry or the background or the context of the client operation, and most importantly, the key objective. What is the key problem that you're hired to solve? So in this case example, I'm just going to start off by reading out the case prompt. So here you go. Here's the case prompt. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is a private organization with vast ambitions. One of its goals is to reduce extreme poverty worldwide. The foundation has asked McKinsey to design a basic financial service offering for residents in remote communities in Mexico. So Mexico, financial product, and for remote communities. I'll just say remote people. So what is the situation? The majority of Mexico's rural population is relatively poor, relying in part on the government benefits for their livelihood. Since they tend not to have bank account, they usually collect those benefits in cash and from a limited number of state-owned bank branches. These branches often a long way from the recipient live, so it can take quite a lot of time and effort to collect benefits. In addition, while traveling to those branches, people can be at risk of falling victim to crime. The Mexican government also owns and operates a chain of 22,000 stores throughout Mexico called Discosa, which provide basic food, clothes, and other essential goods to rural population. So it's like a grocery. These stores are supplied through a network of central and regional warehouses and several thousand delivery trucks. McKinsey provided to investigate and assess the possibility of using the Discosa network to provide a set of basic financial services to supplement the limited number of state-owned bank branches. This would start with dispensing benefit payments and would gradually grow to include saving accounts, bill payments, insurance loans, and other financial products. All right, so the key objective is whether it's possible to use the existing Discosa network to provide financial services to rural Mexican communities. As you can see here, as I am receiving the case prompt, I'm also taking notes. But because it's quite a long prompt and you don't really have the time to write everything down, I just only wrote down some of the key words here. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to repeat back what I have wrote down to make sure that I've gotten all the information right. So in the interview setting, I probably said, all right, so I want to take a moment and make sure that I got all the information right. So in Mexico, there's a lot of people who live in the very remote area who are quite poor. And then a lot of them receive financial benefits in cash format, right? They don't really have bank accounts. And it takes a lot of time and effort for them to travel to collect those bank accounts. And the crime rate is quite high when they do this. The Mexican government currently owns 22,000 Discosa stores. It looks like they are just currently regular grocery stores. But what we are brought in to do is to assess whether we can use the existing Discosa network to provide financial services to the rural community. So that is our key objective. By the way, I like to have the objective here and then highlight it front and center, so then I can always refer back to the key objective throughout the case. This is also a really good opportunity to ask for any clarification questions. The reason why you wanted to do that is because you want to make sure that you fully understand the case context. Sometimes the industry, the client context might not be super intuitive, and you want to also make sure that you fully understand what is being asked of you. So in this case, a couple questions that I want to ask to understand further is, when it comes to the key objective to assess the possibility, do we have any existing success criteria? To what extent do we think that providing financial services through the Decosa network would be a success? And do we have any timeline in mind? For example, when it comes to start off with dispensing the benefit payment, we're looking into establish that right away in 6 months. And when it comes to the full suite of financial services, are we looking into 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, or 5 to 10 years? What does that look like? And also, if the Decosa network is going to basically supplement the existing bank branch, are there additional work or refit of the existing stores that needs to be done to support the expansion of the financial services products, right? So, and if this is a real consulting case interview, the interviewer might either provide you with the answer, or they might say, hey, we don't have the answer from the clients yet, but you can consider that as part of your structure or your framework. So in this case, we'll assume that, we don't really have answers to any of those, but it's true that the short-term goal is to dispense the benefit payment, with the long-term goal probably a couple of years out to provide the full suite of financial product. And there is no clear success criteria, and you can assume that there is probably additional work to be done for the Decosa stores to be able to provide the additional financial products. All right, now you've gotten the basic case context and you understand what exactly is the key problem to solve. Typically, we'll move on to the framework section of the case. A framework is just basically your approach to solve the problem. If you're unfamiliar with framework, I have a list of shorts that I have uploaded where I specifically talk about what exactly are the characteristics of a great framework and how you might, as a beginner, construct a really amazing framework. A couple of things I want to point out with this. The framework should be MISI, which is mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. It just means that you are considering all the important buckets without them overlapping with each other. And the second piece is that it should be structured, which is why I'm using the 1, 2, 3, and then I'm further breaking it down into kind of an issue tree type of format. So it's a lot easier for you to show the interviewer what you're talking about. And the third piece is that when you're narrating your framework, you should be adding examples. You need to make sure that you're able to fully explain what you mean with each one of your bucket. And most importantly, you have to take a hypothesis-driven approach. A hypothesis-driven approach means that you start off with a hypothesis. In this case, we assume that it makes sense if the following buckets are true. And then with additional analysis that you're going to conduct, you're going to be further shape your analysis, either validating or disapprove whether the hypothesis is true. And as you move along the case, you're going to shape the hypothesis to eventually to have it become your final recommendation. So now let's go back to the case and then see what kind of framework should we create here. So now we're going to question 1. What should the team investigate to determine whether the Decosa network could and should be leveraged to provide a range of basic financial services to Mexico's rural population? In this case, I would ask my interviewer if I could spend some time to come up with a network. So I would probably say something like, hey, can I have about 2 to 3 minutes to structure my framework? So this is how I am going to answer this framework question. It would only make sense for us to leverage the Decosa network if the following are true. The first point is that the operational infrastructure feasibility is there. And then second is that it would create great benefits to not only the rural populations, the government, but also the Decosa store, as well as the bank branches. And the third piece is that we have considered all the risks and are okay with either the risk level or have come up with the mitigations. So to go into these buckets further, first of all, when it comes to the operational and or infrastructure feasibilities, I wanted to look into the following parts. One is the infrastructure feasibility, which is here.
What I want to understand is, for the existing DeCosa network, are there enough location coverages for us to assess the majority of the rural populations? And is there enough physical space, right, to handle this additional volume of providing financial services? Because if you look at bank branches, it actually requires quite a lot of space to store cash, to provide all those different services. And the second piece is the staff capability. Offer financial services quite different from actually providing grocery services. So do we need to train the existing staff? Do we need to hire additional people and training, and how does that all going to look like? Is there going to be a sufficient training that's being provided? And then the third piece is the tech part of it. Again, to provide saving account, bill payments, what does that compatibility look like with the existing bank system? Do we need to create something new, or can we easily take over what is existing there and then apply it to the new network? Last but not least here, when it comes to the cash components of it, cash handling, logistics. Can we use the existing trucks? How can we leverage the existing logistics system that DeCosa has? However, keep in mind that because benefits are often collected in cash, so there will probably be needs of armored truck to transport those cash. So then how does that logistics look like? The second bucket that we want to look into is the benefits that's being created. Ideally, the benefits created should be higher than whatever the cost or additional investment that's needed there. So benefits to the rural population. Is it true that by leveraging the DeCosa network, it is going to save the people more money, reduce the time, and also reduce the crime that they might fall into? And for the government, right, is it going to cost them less also to dispense all of those money? Granted that there's probably going to be additional costs when it comes to set up and retrofit all of those different stores. And when it comes to DeCosa stores, if they are able to offer these services, are they going to be able to bring in more businesses? Because while you're there collecting benefits or do whatever you need to do, you might as well pick up some groceries. And last but not least, for the existing bank branches, what benefits can they get? Perhaps increased efficiency, perhaps increased clients, because those are all the people who currently do not have bank accounts, but could have bank accounts once the new network is set up and running. Now, the third bucket is risks. When it comes to operating or outfitting a existing network to provide something such as financial services, there's always going to be risk involved. Because a lot of the stores and people live in more rural area, are there going to be more fraud or more theft? Right? If we are using the DeCosa store network to handle cash, or do we have any existing auditing processes that we can put in place to make sure that none of this happen? And then last but not least, how can we make sure that the financial services that are provided by the DeCosa network are compliant with what currently the bank branches are doing? And all of those are really important factors to consider. This is an example of what a framework could look like. Again, this is just an example. You can have very different approach to what I am listing here. And if you think that there are other important factors that could be interesting to consider, feel free to leave in the comment. Now that we have covered the framework part of the question, we're going to move down to the analysis portion of the case. Typically in a case interview, there's quantitative analysis and qualitative analysis, or sometimes a combination of both. The idea of the analysis is to create additional data points because, again, everybody is making decisions over data these days. If you're interested in practicing more cases because, again, practice makes perfect, but are not sure how your performance measures up, feel free to try our platform, CasewithAI. It is a platform that is specifically trained to give you expert-level customized case interview framework. We have really solid cases from industry projects as well as past interviews. And we have specifically trained the platform. And then we have consultants like myself to give you both the guidance and the feedback on how you can further improve on your existing answer. So eventually you will be able to pass those consulting case interviews with flying colors. All right, so let's go back to the case and then see what kind of analysis that we could do here. All right, so now it's question 2. All right, so I'm going to start taking notes here. And again, I'm just going to put this kind of together so then make sure that I don't lose any of the information and I can always refer back to my key objective. So in my Q2, it cost the family 50 pesos per month to actually make the journey to collect benefit payments. The team also estimated that if benefits become available for collection at a local DeCosa store, the cost would be reduced by 30%. 20% of Mexican population is in rural, and of that number, 50% only receives the state benefit. You can assume that Mexico have a population of 100 million. You can also assume that families in Mexico have an average of 4 members per family. If every family could collect state benefits at their local DeCosa stores, how much in total per year could be saved across all Mexican rural families receiving state benefit? So this is a classic example of a quantitative analysis. For a quantitative analysis, the steps are quite easy. You first of all wanted to repeat the information that I've taken down in case you missed any major numbers. And then you wanted to talk through your approach, how you're going to solve it, and then do your actual calculation. And then last but not least, come up with the so what. So in this case, I'm just going to make sure that I've got all the key information down, right? So it cost the typical family 50 pesos per month to actually collect the benefits. But if we're able to move towards the DeCosa network, that can be reduced by 30%. Now in Mexican, there are 20% people that live in rural area, and 50% of them actually receive the state benefit. And we can assume that the population is 100 million and 4 people per family. So the key question here is how much can we save per year if we're able to move towards this new network? Okay, in order to figure out the savings per year and with the existing information that we have, we wanted to figure out the number of families times the saving per family. And because it is a month, and then I'm going to times 12 months per year. So now let's first calculate how many families are there, right? So we have 100 million people and 4 people per family. So we have 25 million families. And then of the 25 million, 20% lives in rural, and then 50% collect state benefits. So this is how many families that are collecting state benefits. Let me just do a quick calculation here. So it's 25 million times, this is 10%. You need to be really good at doing a lot of the mental calculation because you're not allowed to bring a calculator. So this is something that you can definitely work towards. So what we are here looking at is 2.5 million families. Now let's look into how many savings per family can we generate, right? So typically they would spend 50 peso per month, and the saving is 30%. So that means that we can save $15 pesos per month to do this. And then we have to times 12 because it's 12 months per year. Let's not forget that. And then so putting everything together, so 15 times 12, that's 180. So it's 180 times 2.5. So we're looking at 450 million pesos in terms of saving per year if we're able to move to the DeCosa store. So you've done your calculation, and this is where you bring this information back to the key objective and see how it shapes your hypothesis. So now it's time to bring out the so what, right? Now you have the new information. So what does that do to your existing hypothesis? So what I would say here is, hey, it looks like it makes sense for us to leverage the DeCosa network because, there are substantial savings that we can generate. For the rural families, we're looking at 450 million pesos, which looks like a substantial amount of money. However, in order to further validate this hypothesis, the other pieces that we're interested in looking into is, are there any costs associated with actually setting up the DeCosa network, right? And then how many are actually be able to collect the state benefit from the DeCosa store? Is it, as generous as we have estimated here? And the second piece is that there is obviously still more work that probably needs to be done to turn the existing DeCosa stores into something that could offer those additional financial services. So I'm thinking about maybe cash vaults, thinking about maybe armored cars. And so we need to understand how much additional investments as well as the timeline that it would require for us to actually get there. The other thing that I really like to do here after each question is to basically box the answers. So then in the end, when I have to collect all the information together, it's a lot easier for me to find exactly what were the answers that I have answered to. So here I boxed 450 million pesos. All right, so I'm gonna move on to the next question. The next question is a qualitative analysis. The team conducted a survey on a sample rural population in 3 different regions of Mexico. Participants were shown several statements about the concept of collecting benefits at their nearest DeCosa stores and asked how much they agreed with each statement. The average response to some of the questions in each region is shown below. What are your observations regarding this information, and how would you explain the trends? All right, so this is a very classic qualitative analysis. In a qualitative analysis, very similar to quantitative, you would first take some time to read the chart. The chart will typically be handed to you. You don't have to really take notes. And then you will read out the chart as you're thinking through it, come up with the key insights or key observations, and then end with the so what. So how I would answer this question is, hey, can I take spend a minute and just kind of read the chart? And now I'm going to read the chart out loud. So, hey, looks like this is a survey of how people think about using Dakosa stores for dispensing the payment in different regions. We have 3 regions. It looks like the key areas that we're looking, the key factors that we're considering that people really care about is, whether they're happy, security is one, trust is another one, and then money or cost is another one, and then also the time commitment is kind of the 5th dimension. So it's quite interesting that the answer varies quite a bit. It looks like overall Region A scores fairly high in all of the dimensions. Region B scores quite low in 4 of the dimensions, and Region C is kind of somewhere in the middle. What I'm looking at, kind of the key highlights are here, is that everyone believes that it's going to be a lot quicker to receive the benefits, which is great. It saves them time. What's kind of interesting is, although it saves time, people don't necessarily, especially in Region B and C, believe that it will cost them less. So time saved doesn't equal to money saved. Why is that? It's probably because maybe some of the Dakosa stores are still, you still have to take a bus or whatever to get there. And maybe it's shorter, but it probably still costs you maybe the same amount of money. And then looking at the rest of the other 3, right, what's quite interesting is Region B, people are not very excited to receive their benefit through the store, probably because they don't feel secure of collecting the benefit and trust that their benefit will receive. So it looks like in Region B, there might be some issue associated with fraud or theft. Maybe Region B is in one of those very unsafe regions. In Region A and Region C, it seems like the scores are fairly high. The other thing to also note is that security seems to be a big issue because it is one of the areas that all 3 regions have scored the lowest, where they don't feel secure in collecting their benefits. Again, it might go back to the fraud and theft concern with the Dakosa store as compared to a traditional bank branch. So basically what I have done is I have shared the key insight. And so in summary, what this tells us and how does this shape our key objective, whether it makes sense to use the Dakosa network, is that it looks like, different regions have different opinions about using the network. Region A seems to be the most optimistic, and it could be one of the regions that we can start off with a pilot using the Dakosa network, versus Region B is less optimistic about using the network. So it's probably something that we will do in the end, after we have gotten, a lot of the feedback and have really, shaped the network. And it probably also means that we have a lot more work to be done at Region B than the other 2 regions in order to set it up. The other piece that is really important for us is to know when considering using the Dakosa network is the security of collecting the benefits. So a lot of people seems to have concerns when it comes to collecting benefits through the Dakosa network, probably because of potential concerns around theft or bribery when using a grocery store rather than a traditional bank branch. So it just means that when we do implement it, we have to have very strong auditing process, have a very strong operational process to make sure that the people actually can receive the money. All right, let's move on to question 4. Question 4 is a brainstorm question. Those are quite fun because you get to basically brainstorm and think of different ideas. So in a subsequent meeting, representative from the state-owned bank expressed concern about how challenging it will be to offer basic financial services product to rural population. One of the representatives mentions that there are regions where people have minimal education and are unfamiliar with banking products. There's also significant crime and fraud. He asked the team thoughts about how the bank could sell these services effectively to the population given those challenges. All right, so while it's really fun to have a brainstorm question, you really also have to make sure that your answer is very similar to how you answer the framework question, is very structured and it's meaty. So what I'm going to do is I'll ask for
maybe a minute to kind of structure my answer, and then I'll talk through the answer. All right, so there are probably three things that we can think about from education, building trust, and then fraud prevention perspective. So first, when it comes to the education, we would want to make some very easy to understand education programs, something that could be very easily accessible, something that is short, right? Maybe 5 minutes. And then we want to avoid using jargon. We know that in financial services, it's quite complex, it's quite scary because there are a lot of words that it's just not very intuitive. So if we can just translate those words into something that's more easy for people to understand, it'll be even more useful. And then we should make those financial products, the benefits, more relatable, right? We should make it relatable. For example, what are the benefits of opening a saving account rather than carry cash, right? By opening a saving account, they still have security over the money that the people in rural population would have. But they have increased security because it's money that's saved in the account. It's not cash they will carry that could potentially be taken away from them. And it should also probably be in time. A lot of times education happens and people might not remember them because it's not something that they're actively thinking about. So if we can make those education in time when they're in the store, when they have particular concerns, then it could make it even more influential, more powerful. And then we can also start financial education in school, start them young. Some of the reasons why people are not very financially literate is because they don't really hear a lot in school, but school is prime years of learning, right? So if we can start teaching the kids the benefits of using saving accounts, of leveraging different financial products to make their lives better, they can probably in turn go back and educate their parents, educate people around them, and will also set them up for a brighter future. The second piece is building familiarity and building trust. There seems to be a lot of trust issues that could potentially happen with the Decosa store. So maybe we can start off by doing some pilot in certain regions, and then when it goes really well, then we can use that as assets to basically market to other type of regions. And we can also use incentive to encourage people to be among the first to participate in this type of programs. After they are able to enjoy the benefits, they can probably tell other people about it. So that would be a very natural way to get more people involved and participate. Last but not least, when it comes to address the concerns around fraud and theft, it means that we should have a very strict oversight, right? Very strict cash handling process and regular audit to make sure that everything is done within compliance. We should also increase the security when it comes to, when people take money out and stuff like that. And we also can improve the technology. Basically, instead of encourage people to spend in cash, we can encourage people to spend in card or doing things more electronically, because that is just going to be a lot safer and eventually reduce fraud and theft associated with cash handling. All right, so the case actually ended here with question 4, but typically there is actually final question, which is often the recommendation. To provide a recommendation is actually quite easy. You would leverage a top-down communication style. So the formula is actually that you would provide your recommendation first, follow up with reason, and then conclude with, what are the additional considerations that you might have here. This is also why you will want to have all of your previous analysis, including your frameworks, laid out very clearly in front of you, like what I have here. So then you can easily refer to the previous analysis and kind of bring all the facts together. So let's pretend that the last question is, if the government asks you for a recommendation, what would you provide to them? So what I would have said is, based on the information that we know, we would recommend to leverage the Decosa network. Well, actually, it would make sense for us to leverage the Decosa network to provide financial services, starting with benefit payment and expand that to the full suite of financial services for 2 reasons. Number one is that it's estimated to save the rural family a significant amount of money per year. It's 450 million pesos, which is actually quite substantial. And the second reason is because some regions are already very well set up to be the recipient, right, of this new network. So we can start off with piloting in those areas. However, there are still some other challenges that we have to think about to open up the network to the broader, basically all the rural communities before we can fully commit. First of all, we have to recognize that not all regions are equal when it comes to
the readiness for the Decosa network. So we need to really understand how many regions are readily available, how many of them are not so much, and then what are the investments as well as the timelines that are associated to bring these regions that are not so ready kind of on the same timeline. And the second piece is that there is obviously still more work that probably needs to be done to turn the existing Decosa stores into something that could offer those additional financial services. So I'm thinking about maybe cash vaults, thinking about maybe armored cars. And so we need to understand how much additional investments as well as the timeline that it would require for us to actually get there. All right, so that is the full case. Very quickly walk through. Hopefully by the end of this, you have a better idea of what a case interview look like, and then got some tips about how you can answer some of the questions. If you actually want to take a look at the case, it's available on McKinsey's website. Just be aware that even though it is a sample case that they have provided, the answers that on the website are actually not that comprehensive. As you can see, I actually have added a lot more of my own personal thoughts into that. But again, this is only one example of how I'm going to answer the questions. You might have different opinions, different thoughts, different perspectives that you should feel free to add on to the case to make it your own. All right, so that is the full case. Very quickly walk through. Hopefully by the end of this, you have a better idea of what a case interview look like. If you have any other questions about case interviews or consulting, feel free to leave in the comment, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.